All right, so joining me via Zoom, I just laid it out. First of all, he is a wildlife biologist, host of a show called Extinct or Alive. New book for the YouTube users, Still Alive by Forrest Galante. And so let me give my listeners a little bit of background. It's COVID. There's nothing to do. I don't think my wife particularly liked me at that moment in time. And then, we're flipping channels 9, 10 o'clock at night. We come across this incredible show on Animal Planet. It's called Extinct or Alive. They drop this crazy person into the most remote places in the world. And his job is to find animals that are believed to be extinct. We've been hooked ever since. Again, the book is called Still Alive, a wildlife of discovery, which is available on Amazon and everything. Forrest Galante, that's the longest introduction I've ever done, but thank you so much for your time, man.
I like it, Aaron. Thank you for having me, man. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you. It truly is. And what I think is interesting is kind of in reading the book, we all kind of see the end product. You're this incredible wildlife biologist living out your dream. But I think even in setting that up, what was interesting in reading the book was that you were never believed you were going to be this TV guy. Like you were basically a biologist. You're tagging animals. You're working, up in Santa Barbara, doing a lot of great work. So give everyone that's seen the show or heard your name or heard you on Joe Rogan or wherever, just the brief, because it's incredible, where life takes you sometimes. But as you say, TV is a great platform to get your message out.
For sure, man. Yeah, no, I never saw myself working in TV. I mean, when you're a kid from Zimbabwe who grew up without TV, you certainly don't ever think of it as being an industry that you can ever work in. I mean, I was a bow-legged kid in safari shorts, not someone who ever aspired to work in TV, never met a single person that worked in TV, never seen a professional video camera, nothing. So, in Still Alive, one of the things I do is obviously I communicate conservation and wildlife and love of the sciences. I talk about adventure and injury and political unrest and all that stuff. But I tell it through the lens of the linear progression as to how I went from that bow-legged kid in safari shorts into being, one of the better known presenters in the outdoor space. And that whole progression, how it happened, how I seized my tiny windows of opportunity when they were presented to me. And that's, that's what that really more so than finding extinct animals or anything, that's what I'm good at, is like looking for opportunity and really seizing it and pushing really hard to make things happen. And that's why our expeditions are successful. That's why our TV show is successful. I'm hoping the book will be successful, so on and so forth.
So I did not realize that this was a show, and I'm not a huge TV nerd, but so this all started, you and your wife were sitting there and there's a show called Naked or Afraid. Is this my understanding? And I guess
Naked and Afraid. Yep. It's not or, it's and. Yeah.
Okay. And so you're a biologist, you're working at a regular biology firm or whatever, and you kind of are looking at these dopes on TV saying, I grew up in Zimbabwe, like you just said, and that was essentially the launch of your TV career, for lack of a better term.
Yes and no, Aaron. I mean, so I was a biologist. I felt like I wasn't making a big difference. And I came home, I plopped down on the couch, covered in filth, working as a biological field tech, making like $14 an hour. And, I still had like a pretty impressive repertoire of things I had done and discoveries I'd made to my name, but I was still just an academic grinding away. And I came home, I plopped down on the couch. My wife was flipping through the channels. She was my girlfriend at the time. And she was like, look at this stupid thing. Like, what is this? Like, look at these idiots. Like, you're way better than this. And so I ended up like sending in a pretty arrogant email to the production company being like, hey, I'm better at this than the people you have on TV. Give me a shot. And when I signed up for it and did it, I did it as a vacation, a joke, something fun to do, an experience, never because I wanted to work in TV. I went and did it, went back home, went back to being a field biologist. But when the show came out and it received 4.5 million views on the opening night, compared to the 400 reads that I'd got on my last academic paper, I was like, this is a no-brainer. Like, this is a platform where I really can communicate wildlife and science. And so, look, 200-300 people have done Naked and Afraid or things like Survivor, right? They don't all go on to have their own TV shows. So that gave me the taste and the thirst for it, it didn't really give me the opportunity. The opportunity came by creating it myself and going and knocking on a gazillion doors, as I write about in the book, and getting so many no's and getting so much rejection, and finally getting a maybe, which eventually turned into a yes, and here we are today.
And so take people in. So again, the show is called Extinct or Alive. It's on Animal Planet. 2 seasons in the books. I can speak for my wife. We're hoping for season 3. We'll maybe get to that at some point. And the concept is simple. And I think that's why I love it, is you don't have to be a zoologist. You don't have to have an animal background. It's, your grandfather was part of helping uncover an animal that was believed to be extinct millions of years ago. And so I don't mean to be super linear and give away the whole book, but how do you go from I go on Naked and Afraid, I embarrass everybody else, it's too easy, to now I'm pitching Animal Planet on this show where they're going to drop me in Zimbabwe or and look for this extinct lion, or if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, straight up. So what happened was I did Naked and Afraid. Right, I got my 15 seconds of fame, like everybody that does any of those ensemble cast shows gets. Right, like if you do Survivor, you do Naked and Afraid, do any of those things, like everybody gets their like local newspaper to reach out to them and be like, hey, hometown hero, like tell us about your time running around the woods naked, right? And what I did when everybody reached out to me for that is I was like, no thanks, I don't really want to talk about that. And they were like, what? Why don't you want to talk about that? And I'm like, because that's like nonsense. But if you want to talk about something important, let me tell you about the giant lobster that I caught off the coast of California that was 70 years old. It's the largest one taken in the state. Let me tell you about the time I documented hammerheads 300 miles further north than they've ever been seen before. Let me tell you, this, that, and the other thing. And most of the reporters were like, click. But a couple of them were like, yeah, all right, give us that story and we'll like try and tie it in. So I told a few of these stories, and a couple of them, because I did have media, I had photos and videos, just cell phone photos and videos and GoPro stuff, but just little things that I'd collected as one does in today's world. And they went viral. Like, well, some of them blew up, places like the Daily Mail, they got hundreds of millions of views. And then, I had this little bit of opportunity. So between Naked and Afraid and between having all of this little bit of opportunity with these like viral stories, people started to approach me and be like, hey, are you interested in doing another TV show? Would you, for instance, a producer who was putting together a show for MTV approached me and said, do you want to do a survival dating show? And I was like, not even a little bit. But that producer sent me what's called a deck and a sizzle reel, which is a video reel put together that you use to pitch executives and basically a PowerPoint presentation. And I looked at that and I was like, well, this isn't very good. Like I could make a better one of these, in a weekend. And so instead of like following the path and being like, yeah, I want to do TV, let me go with you. And I'm going to do this dumb MTV naked or dating show and see if I can pivot it from there. I just made my own. I literally straight ripped off the deck that was sent to me, copied it, except put my own words and my own ideas in it, my own pictures in it, and then built my own very crummy sizzle reel out of videos that I had using a kid who was like 19 who could barely edit on iMovie. And we put this shit together and then went out and found partners to partner with and pitched it. And so it was a big, I'm not talking about something we did in 4 days. This took 2 years to put this all together, from when I first had the idea, I want to work in TV, I want to promote conservation on that platform, to when I actually got a pilot, not even a series, picked up as a special. So it wasn't even a full pilot. And and that took 2 years to get to that point. 2 years of like relentless no's and rejections and notes and changing things and so on and so forth. But we did get there eventually. So, I think the story here, much like looking for an extinct animal, is one of persistence.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. And I want to get into some of these stories because they're insane. But, the thing that stands out to me as a life lesson that people can take from anything is you got to create your own opportunities in life. And it doesn't happen overnight. Is that fair to say? Like when you're telling your grandkids about how this all started, those are going to be 2 lessons that you would impart on them?
Oh man, I will whoop it into them straight up. Like not even kidding, because the only reason, like when my family came over here, so we were forcefully left Zimbabwe because of some terrible political unrest during the land reform. And so when my family came over here, we were on welfare. We were in government housing. Like we had nothing. And I never, ever, by the way, strive to be affluent. Like to this day, it doesn't interest me. But what I did want to do is have a comfortable life. And more importantly, I wanted to pursue my passion. And that comes at a cost. It's like in the words of Alan Watts, he basically says, if you want to do something, become a master of it, because as soon as you're a master of it, you're valuable. And I didn't know this at the time, but all I wanted to do was pursue my passion, not even knowing how I could ever make 10 cents off of it. But I loved wildlife and I loved biology. So I just stayed true to that, and slowly everything has come. And, I hope to instill that into my kids and my grandkids and so on and so forth.
Very good. Let's get into it. Again, Extinct or Alive, the book is called Still Alive, and it is available again on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you get books. I have read it cover to cover. It is fantastic, by the way. And so one thing that actually blew me away, and I actually, again, I'm so corny and lame. I read this excerpt out loud to my wife, is that we see the end product of a show, and you're going after the Zanzibar leopard, right? Like this, we think it's extinct, whatever. What blew me away was how much time goes into the process. So I guess what I would say is, how do you identify animals that might still be out there? But then what blew me away was this concept of, we can't go too early, we can't go too late, we can't go during hurricane season, we can't go during monsoon season, we can't go when it's too cold, we can't go when it's, and you were saying, that some of these expeditions, you have a 4 or 5 week window to get in there and do your work and do your investigation. So that was what kind of blew me away. And what you do is, again, we see the finished product. Oh, cool. He found this. That's amazing. I'm so happy. We're hugging at the end. But like, the amount of work just to get on the ground to pursue your passion, which is, again, one of your passions, finding extinct animals.
Yeah, it's a ton of work, Aaron. And that's something I'm glad that you picked that up from the book, because I really did want to convey that, all these. So the thing that you see on TV is a highlight reel, right? It's the culmination of years of research, months of preparation, and weeks in the field, boiled down to 44 minutes with cable breaks, or commercial breaks, excuse me. So, it's like there's so much that you never get to see. And then the variables, like you were mentioning, it's like, okay, we're looking for this animal, but you have to go there during that animal's ecology. Like, when is it most active? Maybe it's something that hibernates. Okay, so you have to go in the spring, but that's really dangerous because you don't know when you're going to get a big snowstorm, and, so on and so forth. So you have to narrow it down and down and down to being like, these are the most ideal circumstances under which we can launch an expedition, still knowing that you have like a 99.9% chance of being unsuccessful, even when you do that. Because extinct doesn't mean hiding around the corner. Extinct doesn't mean under the next bush. It means gone, right? This is like hunting for aliens, right? Or Bigfoot or something, except it's not bullshit. It's not cryptozoology. It's the real deal. So yeah, we always had our hopes up for sure. I don't think any of us were expecting to have as much success as we've actually had.
Well, and that was actually something interesting as well. And again, I'm just looking at it as the dumb guy that, loves dogs and, pets the dog walking down the street. But, you actually say in the book, like, we're not going in believing there's 0% chance, because we wouldn't be doing it otherwise. But we kind of have to brace ourselves for the reality that we might not find what we're looking for, which, again, I think is counter to somebody that just watches those 44 minutes on TV. At least, like I said, at least this dumb guy right here, I don't know, like I go in every episode like, Forrest got this, he's good, he'll find that. And then, you know what I mean? So
I think that's sheer passion and enthusiasm that people feel like I'm going to. But look, when it comes to TV, finding Bigfoot, and obviously they're never going to find Bigfoot and never did. That went on for like 9-10 seasons, whatever, right? So I guess, the journey can be the destination. And one thing that I always strive to do when we make TV shows, and even in this book, is make the journey the destination, because odds are we're not going to find this animal that we're looking for. But while we're there, why not look at this incredible environment? Look at this amazing stuff. Look at all the other animals that inhabit this area. Look at all the other things that are worth saving. And that's kind of what the point of the show is to me, even more so than finding the extinct animal. Now, when we started to actually find a couple extinct animals, it was like, holy shit, like knocked us on our butts, because we're doing stuff that literally everybody said was impossible. It's like when if you've ever seen The Lost City of Z, the Netflix movie, or read the book, when Percy Fitzpatrick gets up in front of his colleagues and is like, I'm going to find the Lost City of Z, they're all like, you're crazy, you're a lunatic. Like that's what it was like when I told a bunch of my colleagues that I was going to look for extinct animals, and now I'm like, haha, screw you guys. Like I'm doing it. So yeah, no, it's been a wild ride.
For people who are listening, not watching the video, this is the first time I'll ever have to bleep out a double bird in the middle of the podcast. But all right, so let's go talk about a couple of the adventures here. So the caiman, the Rio Apiporus caiman. So you go into the jungle of the Amazon, which is only part of the story, because if I'm not mistaken, you basically had to negotiate with maybe some basically Colombian drug lords. Like, I'm just going to say it. Yep. You said in the book, so I don't feel bad. Like, this isn't a top secret. So you were basically in a place that no human basically had ever been, if my understanding is correct, because it's heavily guarded by, again, people that don't want people like you in their territory, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. It was a hell of a thing. Like, we had to charter a cargo plane, a DC-3 World War II cargo plane that would fly into a Colombian airstrip. Now, if you're wondering why a cargo plane would fly into the middle of an airstrip in the Colombian jungle, yeah, you guessed it. They're moving booger sugar, but nobody admitted to that. So, sure. We had to charter this crazy old plane held together by duct tape to fly into a cocaine dealer's airstrip in the middle of the Colombian Amazon, to then travel like 150 kilometers upriver into FARC rebel-controlled Amazon territory, where had been, it was nothing but guerrilla warfare for 30, 40 years. So it was quite an expedition. And you top that off with the fact that we were looking for an extinct crocodilian that could totally eat you. We had to get blessed by a shaman who blew this crazy stuff in our face. I mean, it was a wild ride.
Well, you didn't even mention your lead camera guy, Mitch, had an allergic reaction, which, by the way, my wife would never forgive me. You and Mitch cool? Like, you put Mitch in some pretty tough situations. So
are me and Mitch cool? I'm the best man at his wedding in November, so I hope we're still cool. Yeah, okay. No, Mitch is one of my best friends in the whole world, zero question.
Now, for people who've never seen the show, he's nearly stepped on a couple snakes. He got attacked by those wasps in the Amazon. So there's that. I believe, I could be mistaken, I don't know if it was the pilot, but the first animal you discovered, the Zanzibar leopard, like, you kind of told Mitch, like, this of everyone that we're looking for, like, this is just the one that's not going to happen. Is that fair to say?
Straight up. No, so it wasn't the pilot, but funnily enough, the Zanzibar leopard was the last expedition we did in season 1. Mm-hmm. And on the very first shoot, on the way to the shoot, the very first expedition, Mitch sat next to me on the plane, and we started talking, and he's like, what's the one animal we're not going to find? And I'm like, well, we're not going to find any of them. Let's be realistic, blah, blah, blah. But he's like, what's the one that there's just zero chance of happening? And I was like, oh, the Zanzibar leopard, man. It's a small island. It's hugely overpopulated. The national park's tiny. Like, it's basically a waste of time. Like, we're doing it because it's a super cool story. It's a conservation message that needs to be told before other animals are wiped out in that part of the world. But, like, we're never going to find it. And he's like, oh, okay, whatever. I won't hold out hope. And then, of course, devil, like dumb luck, that's the animal that we found, the first animal that we found. So yeah, it was wild. Even I was never anticipating that.
How tough is it for you? Your message is conservation. How tough is it for you when you go into a place that doesn't have the same standards, expectations, whatever that we as Americans or whatever have? And I think there was a situation where you hired a guy to kind of lead you through the jungle, and he brought a gun, like, ready to shoot his own, whatever. I mean, as a conservationist, a biologist, and I want to emphasize, just because you're on TV, like, you're doing real science work here, like, how tough is it for you to and there's been a couple times in the show where your crew kind of has to, like, force, like, how tough is that for you? If that wasn't even a question, but I don't know if it made sense, but to just deal with, like, that concept of, I'm in another country with other, morals and standards and all that stuff. And I'm here to try to help. And sometimes the people can't even help themselves.
Keep in mind, I grew up in another country and one where witchcraft and lore is the supreme religion. So I am very used to it. I'm very comfortable around it. I'm extremely respectful of it. All that being said, I stick to my moral compass regardless of the situation. And what I mean by that is people often mistake legality and ethicality for being the same thing, right? I mean, we see that constantly. Like, it's legal to go shoot a grizzly bear. It's not fucking ethical to go shoot a grizzly bear. You know, it's just not. I'm sorry. And I have friends who are big game hunters, and I have no problem with hunting, by the way. I'm a huge advocate for sustainable proteins, but it's not fucking ethical, right? Sorry, I'm dropping too many F-bombs.
It's okay. Drop them away. I'm from the East Coast. All I do is every other word, but
I get excited by this stuff. But the problem is, in the US, it's not a problem, but let me explain something. In the United States, what's happened is we've done a very good job of making unethical things illegal in the wildlife space. Okay. We've done a wonderful job of that. I mean, you know, there's a reason you can't go out and murder bald eagles and so on and so forth, right? It's because it's unethical. Now, in the rest of the world, legality and ethicality are much further apart. And so I follow my moral compass as a conservationist, regardless of the culture, the custom, the tradition, the anything, because at the end of the day, what I believe is ethical is preserving those species for future generations. So when I'm in a situation like I was in Taiwan, where you're mentioning, where a national park appointed porter had pulled out a gun to hunt in the only national park on the island of Taiwan. There's one, and it's tiny, to kill stuff. The only place in the whole country that things are protected, even though it might have been his culture 100 years ago or even 50 years ago, I was livid because it's unethical. I mean, if he goes out and shoots that Formosan clouded leopard or that sun bear or whatever it happens to be, there's not going to be any for his kids to hunt, period. There's not going to be any for his kids to even see. So he might suffer immediately, and I might get seen as insensitive. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to save the animals for everybody, you know, so that all those cultures and traditions and customs can continue. And this is a problem worldwide, Aaron, because in the Maasai, a young warrior must kill a lion to drape the lion over his shoulders to become a man, right? Well, that was great when we had little tribes of 10 Maasai, but since Western influence and culture, now there's tribes of 200,000 of them living in cities, right? You kind of have 200,000 people going out there to kill a lion. There's not enough lions. So we have to figure out a balance. And I'm not saying that they can't stick to their traditions, but we have to figure out a balance where the animals get to survive and the culture gets to survive. And like I said, at the end of the day, I'm not there to make friends. I'm not there. I don't care if I'm seen as culturally insensitive or anything else. I'm going to follow my moral code, and that is to protect the animals.
So, dumb question. I mean, is there something the average person can do? I mean, and by the way, I'm not trying to push my personal, and I have friends that hunt and all that stuff. I'm not talking about the guy that during deer season, when deer are overpopulated, like that's different than going into
100%.
Yeah, and like
go shoot your deer. I'm for it. That's good, sustainable protein. I went spearfishing yesterday. That's what I spent my day doing yesterday to get protein for my family. I'm for it. There's a big difference between that and unethical hunting. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. And it's an important distinction, because I don't want people thinking I'm on my high horse, because I'm not either. But is there something the average person can do? I mean, you know, you're talking about Africa, Taiwan, Sub-Saharan Africa, whatever. What can the average person do that's like, well, shit, man, I want to go on a safari someday and see some lions, and I want to bring my grandkids. And I mean, is there anything the average person can do?
100%. There's tons of stuff. So what I like to tell people, because when you dig in, like, I want to save the world, and you Google that, right? Or I want to I want to be an environmentalist or a conservationist or whatever, you're going to be inundated by, people with their hands out going, give me money, do this, do that. Don't do that. Don't do that, people, because you're wasting your time. You're going to look at it all and go, it's too much. It's overwhelming. Ask yourself, look in the mirror, turn inward and go, what do I care about? Is it big cats like lions and tigers? Is it bears? Is it plastic pollution? Is it clean energy? Is it water quality? I don't know what that question is, but ask yourself what matters to you and make little changes that are going to impact that. So say you do want to do these things one day, right? Or maybe you don't ever even think you'll have the means to travel one day, but you want to make a difference. Well, maybe look at the label of the stuff you're buying. And I know this is like one of those things that people say, but think about how it all connects, right? If you go down to Albertsons tomorrow, Vaughn's, whatever your grocery store is, and buy a pack of Oreos, and I'm not hating on Oreos, I freaking love Oreos, but if you go buy those Oreos and you turn the ingredients label over, you're going to see that they're made with palm oil, right? Palm oil is the leading cause of deforestation, meaning they're clear cutting entire incredible ecosystems like the jungles of Borneo to plant oil palm. Now, when you clear cut massive tracts of basically when you plant tons of palm oil and nothing else, you get monoculture, one thing growing. That creates these avenues for explosions in bat populations, the same exact bats that led to the COV virus. So instead of sitting locked inside going, crap, I can't do anything because there's a pandemic, know that by just not buying Oreos, going to Trader Joe's and buying the knockoff Jozos instead, which basically taste exactly the same, you personally could be helping prevent the next global pandemic. So it's little things like that, like making little tiny choices that aren't even sacrifices. They're just choices that can lead to a huge difference, and finding out what those things that you care about are and how you can impact them that make a massive change.
It's really good stuff. Really good stuff. We got a couple more minutes. You got some other interviews lined up. First of all, I'm just curious, anyone who's seen your work, whatever, you've swum with crocodiles, swum with sharks, whatever. If you were quote unquote afraid, you wouldn't do it. But have you ever found yourself in a situation that's just like, how did I get myself here? Or maybe I need to backtrack a little bit. What's like the situation that you were like, oh shit, maybe I went a little bit too far here, or has there been one?
All the time, man. And don't be fooled by the TV bravado. I'm scared shitless half the time, but I'm doing, there's a difference between being stupid and being brave. Being stupid is never being scared. Being brave is being scared and doing it anyway, right?
Sure.
And yeah, I take what I call are calculated risks, right? You're asking, when am I scared? 3 days ago, I was swimming in a crocodile trap to put the bait in it in one of the most crocodile infested areas in the world, where 5 people had been killed by a crocodile that week. And we were after that crocodile. And I can't say more than that other than it's coming to Discovery Plus later this year. Ooh. But you don't think I was scared when I got waist deep in the water, having seen a man-eating crocodile 15 minutes prior with a giant piece of meat to go and put it in a cage? I was scared shitless, but I also knew that I was doing it for a good cause. And if I maneuvered in the right way and did it quickly and had the guy drop the cage door down behind me and open it up again, my odds of success were greater than my odds of being killed. So, I take these risks all the time, but don't be fooled into thinking that I'm not scared, because I am scared plenty.
Fantastic. What are some expeditions that you want to do going forward? I mean, I don't know how much you can share, or you've already taped or whatever. I mean, there's got to be, you've been, I think, probably on all 7 continents at this point, but what do you still want to do? I have to imagine there's a lot.
Oh man, that list is infinite. I'm just barely getting started, Aaron, but there's so many things I want to do. Extinct or Alive is an amazing thing. I've had a wonderful time doing it. Writing the book's been fantastic. But I want to expand a little bit more. Instead of just focusing on this black and white, is it extinct, isn't it, or extinct, I'd like to open up the world of animal misunderstanding. Animals that are demonized and villainized for no reason. 20 years ago, when the movie Jaws came out, everybody thought if you got in the water with a shark, you were going to be killed, right? Today, I can't go on Instagram without seeing some gorgeous blonde swimming next to a great white shark every single day, right? Yeah. So the perceptions are changing, and helping to forward that change is something that I want to do to help, because the truth is, Aaron, once people get to understand wildlife and the outdoors, they get to appreciate it. And once they get to appreciate it, they care about saving it. So I think what I want to do, and this is a very grandiose way, and I can name some specifics of answering your question, but I just want to expand that whole world of loving wildlife and the outdoors and wild places. And I want to go to Papua New Guinea. The Pantanal is number 1 on my bucket list. I want to go to India and work with the gharial, which are these elongated snouted crocodiles with a big bulbous thing on the end of their face. I mean, the list goes on. There are so many things I haven't done. It's insane. And, I'll get to as many as I can in this lifetime. That's for sure.
You had an incident that you kind of shared on Instagram. Is that related to what was going on with the crocodiles? The incident where you had to basically leave under the cloak of darkness.
Oh, you saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to give a little context to your listeners, it's funny. I almost felt a little bit deceitful to people following along on Instagram, because by the time I posted that, I was back in cell phone service 2 days after the incident had happened.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
people were like following along, and they were saying these messages like, "I'm on the edge of my seat. How's it going?" And I'm like, "I'm fine. This was 3 days ago." But what happened was, Aaron, and nobody knows about this, so your listeners are getting a little insight here.
Let's go.
We were in a very remote part of Mozambique working on this crocodile project that I just explained briefly, and I don't want to say too much more about that. But when we got there, it was an area that tourists had not been to in 3 years, which isn't 30 years like some of the places we'd been, but in 3 years. And what we found out, which we didn't actually even know, but we just found this out when we were sort of raided, I guess is the best way to put it. What we found out was that the area that we had gone to had a politician, a Mozambican politician, who had been corrupted by an illegal Chinese logging company and was allowing the logging company to come in and clear cut ancient hardwoods. This politician thought that we were there to expose him and that he was going to get into huge trouble. But as the lead politician of the entire region, he had control over the secret police and the military. So he sicked them on us without coming himself. This is how we found out about all this. We were just there to mess around with a crocodile. We didn't even know about the logging thing. Anyway, he sicked the military and secret police on us. We handed them a bunch of paperwork, which was all real paperwork, but they were just like sitting there scratching their heads like, wait, this says crocodile? Like, I don't know what to do here. And we fled. Because we were told that they were coming to get us. They were coming to take our gear, take us into custody. They were going to confiscate all of our equipment. And there was a pretty good chance that we weren't going to be seen from again. So I recorded those videos for the U.S. consulate as basically this is what's going on. You know, if you don't find us, here's where we are. Here's what's happening. And so those videos were actually for the U.S. consulate while we were on the run from this corrupt Mozambican politician. And clearly we made it out of there. Nothing too terrible happened. We lost a few cameras, which were like kind of decoy cameras for them. But overall, everything worked out fine.
if that doesn't sell you on buying the book, Still Alive, a wild life of rediscovery, and as well as Extinct or Alive. So the book is the focus now. Are there any, I know you can't share too many details. Is maybe another season, another made for TV? I guess you said Discovery Plus is the next place to look.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I'm not sure how much I'm supposed to say, but screw it. You know, I've got a lot of stuff coming up. I've got a great new project with Discovery Plus. Shark Week's right around the corner. I've got a couple Shark Week projects on the go, you know, all in the same vein of misidentified, lost, missing wildlife. Incredible stuff going on. The book has been an absolute pleasure to write. It's been super fun to publish it during this time of COVID and allow people to get a much more in-depth look at what I do, as opposed to just seeing that little shiny highlight reel of what the TV shows are and my life and where I came from. So everything's good. It's been a wonderful ride, and there's certainly a lot coming up.
All right. He is Forrest Galante, again, a wildlife biologist. The show is called Extinct or Alive. The book is called Still Alive. You can follow him on Instagram at Forrest Galante. My man, dude, thank you. This was fun. I know you got other interviews. Whenever the next project comes out, we will have to do this again, but I genuinely appreciate the time, my man.
Time and place, Aaron, and I'll be there. I'd love to.